background and where it's come from and exactly what it delivers, and then cover some of these things as well. My name's Mark Stubbs. I'm Head of Learning and Research Technologies at Manchester Met University. So on behalf of Manchester Met, welcome to our cramped conditions. You'll see in a minute why we're in this room. It's very significant historically to the development of XCRI. What I'll try and do is give a bit on the history, where we're up to, have a look at what the implications are of the European dimension to the project, and then also give you a sense of how the things you're learning on the ground where you try and implement it can actually feed into the spec development process. And I'll try and do it fairly quickly. In terms of why XCRI came about, I think we gathered in Manchester many years ago, and we sort of put down a series of bullet points about what was concerning us all. And I think the main things are still relevant. These are the ones that we originally had down. Basically, there's a lot of talk in all the literature about how there's going to be really good information, advice and guidance, that we're going to have informed choice about learning opportunities. People are going to be able to make more educated decisions about the learning opportunities that are right for them. But then there was also running contrary to that, this sort of feeling that, well, if I want to buy a telly, it's really easy to do product comparisons and to find out how many HDMI sockets they've got around the back and all this sort of stuff. You know, and I'm only spending 500 quid. If I'm going to spend 3 or 4 years of my life and a hell of a lot more, it's actually a lot harder to find out and compare what sort of learning opportunities are available. So we were conscious that the sort of rhetoric about informed choice wasn't quite stacking up with the reality of information, advice and guidance that was available on other forms of products rather than educational ones. The other thing that we were conscious of when we put the project together was that there were some pretty good standards starting to emerge from IMS and others about people and groups and membership. So if the student record system knew who was enrolled on what, we could probably use that data to provision Moodle or WebCT or whatever with all the right areas and make sure people ended up on them, because the standards enabled us to do that. If we wanted to reuse learning objects from one place to another, a bit flaky places, but at least people have been making progress on the standards to enable to do it. When it came to actually courses, there wasn't anything in place when we originally put this together. There wasn't the spec, the IMS spec for courses. There was just this assumption that, well, you'll just find those, won't you? So it was addressing that lay at the heart of the XCRI rationale as well. I think the thing, though, that really bugged us was that the institutions that we worked in were putting really serious amounts of thought into having quite sophisticated online prospectus stuff, and there was a definitive pot of data, and they were drawing out from it and publishing it on the website. And then you watched their colleagues down the corridor retyping it into UCAS or into the National Learning Directory, or trying to get together spreadsheets to send to various different lifelong learning networks of people who needed the data. And we thought, hang on, this can't be right. So for all these reasons, I think there was this genuine sense amongst the community that, well, we should get together and do something about it. It's mad. You know, people deserve better. There should be some standards in place to make this a lot easier, and that really is why XCRI came about. In terms of where the concept was born, technically we had an IMS Enterprise SIG meeting deep in the heart of Wales, fabulous views across the Welsh countryside, across to Anglesey, and it was in that car park, I think, as we were mulling around in between sessions, that the idea started to form. It was actually in this, was it this room or was it the one upstairs?
I think it was actually this room.
It was actually up here, I think. It was either this one or upstairs, where the actual project meeting where we heard from GIST that there was going to be a call the following Tuesday, that if we really got our skates on, we could hit with the XCRI project. So a number of us were gathered here and have regathered to see how far we've done in that time. The other key part in the equation was a bet involving a bottle of wine that actually this thing really deserved to get funded. So these are all the different things that have come together. And here's a nice picture off our website of the business school and where we met. You see, actually, it does look like that. It was raining when we first met, but it's not today, so quite impressive. So what's the whole concept then for those colleagues that haven't come across XCRI before? Typically, a learning provider, a university or a college, has got a web prospectus. That web prospectus might be populated, as was the case from quite a few of the FE colleges in Scotland that we work with, from an access database or maybe something more sophisticated. Lifelong learning networks and others were asking for the data, and typically some sort of different process would then ensue to get the data about the learning opportunities across to the LLM. It might involve transcribing that data into Excel and sending Excel spreadsheets through. It might involve populating a specific web portal where it would be recoded and retyped in, but there'd be a different process. It wouldn't be the same kind of data that was going through. We probably have the same arrangement going on for UCAS. We probably have a different arrangement going on for the National Learning Directory. And maybe, like this place for instance, we're in the business school, there are specialist MBA providers. So yet again, we'd retype all this data into the web portal for the specialist MBA providers. Oh, and graduate prospects, and. So that was the old way, and in fact that's the way that still dominates in the sector. The provider rekeys and pushes for each aggregator. What we wondered about was, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could just reuse that data? The stuff that the quality people think is the best description of the courses that we want to use for online prospectus. What if we just published it and left it sitting there in an XML format ready to be picked up, to be pulled, or to be polled by these different aggregators, rather than sent individually to each one? So that's the sort of philosophy behind XCRI, the notion that if we've got an industry standard for doing this, a learning provider can publish an XML description of the courses they have on offer and leave it sitting there ready to be picked up by the different aggregator organisations to avoid rekeying. Does that make sense? Any questions on the sort of format for it?